Hello and welcome to episode 16 of Let Them Eat Cake. This episode we spoke to Richard Hannay, who also goes by George. He is a master's student studying international relations and a Twitch streamer. He has a background in history and civil wars, as well as Greek politics. Greece is one of the most polarised countries on the right-left spectrum. The anarchists and communists unify against fascism, and if you remember a few years ago, identity movements were at their height. In Greece, one of the capitals of the Euro-fascists were disbanded under law because they were connected to murders. They were called Golden Dawn. The police made up much of the members, so this episode is less about that organisation because that's more common knowledge, but it's more about the political climate post Golden Dawn. And as always, we are 5th Gen, an information warfare cooperative that aims to shed light on things those in power want to be kept in the dark. We want to give a voice to the voiceless and give people the information they need to thrive in a world that tries so hard to starve you of it. This episode, you will have Ace and John as your co-hosts. Please enjoy the show.
We have a weapon more powerful than the British Empire, and that weapon is our refusal to bow to any order but our own, any institution but our own.
So, hi everybody. I am Richard Hannay, or you can call me George. I have a degree in military history, and I am studying to have a master's degree in international relations, which is wonderful. I have a Twitter account and a Twitch stream, so I am at Richard Hannay 17 on Twitter and Richie Hannay on Twitch. And I do a bunch of commentary on the war in Ukraine, but I also just have a bunch of background, not only in Greek political activism, but also in history of insurgencies and civil wars, which is stuff that I find bizarre enjoyment in studying, even though they're all depressing. So, hi.
So, would you say Greece is underrated or overrated?
Interesting. That's a very nuanced. So I think that it is a bit underrated. There's a lot of discussion about the faults of Greece abroad, specifically that have to do with its economics and how the country is in poverty. But in reality, we're still one of the more developed countries in the world. We are still probably in the top 30 countries in terms of development. It's still mostly fine to live in Greece, but the ways Greece is broken has to do with things that aren't that discussed in foreign circles. Things that have to do with clientelism and political corruption in the country, and also nobody really understands how not only politically divided but how violent Greek politics are.
Well, that's
Because
actually what I was going to get into next. Is I would say, besides what I see about the economy, which I haven't seen in a while, to be honest, I see a lot of stuff about the riots in Greece, and they always seem to be a new faction every week.
Your guys' riots go pretty crazy.
oh yeah,
The thing I actually wanted to get into, the first thing I want to ask you about is I heard something, and I've seen footage of there was like a murder by police of a 16-year-old like Romani,
hmm
and basically people have broken out into rioting. If you don't mind, could you just quickly give some background and kind of break down that situation and maybe uh add your take and why you think these things, I don't know, often devolve into riots in Greece?
yeah, sure. So basically there was supposedly some kind of car chase. I'm not 100% sure how the kid was killed. But that's the thing. The While the police in Greece is extremely violent, it is actually pretty rare that they will shoot and kill you. In the capital, and in fact most of the country, people aren't heavily armed in Greece. There's the big exception is the big island of Crete down south, and I will explain the situation there because it's actually very interesting. But So yeah, the police is unlikely to kill you, but they are an extremely right-wing organization, and they are very, very violent with left activists in general, and especially anarchists and anti-fascists. They have a real bone to pick with that crowd. So here's the thing: every time there's like a police killing, which are rare, usually there's going to be an extremely strong reaction from the Greek left. And in this case, particularly, it happened to be the killing of a 16-year-old boy that came on the anniversary of the most famous police murder in modern Greek times, which was the murder of Grigoropoulos, which was a
I remember
15-year-old
hearing
kid.
about that too, but I didn't know that it came on the same day.
Yeah, it was the kid now was killed on the 15th of December, and the sorry, on the 5th of December, and that murder took place on the 6th of December in 2008. So if you see Greek riots, you'll know that we are far more liberal with the use of Molotov cocktails, batons, and there's exchanges of flashbangs and tear gas, and that is pretty standard. No one is you won't get shot if a Molotov cocktails fly. It's not in the US. I would expect you would get shot if you ever threw a Molotov cocktail.
Probably. Probably.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we tend to
You get shot at.
see Molotovs like being used on like when nobody is around on like Planned Parenthood and things like that.
Oh shit! Those are.
It's very rare that
Yeah,
we see them
nobody's
used against police.
nobody's really chucking Molotovs at the cops, unfortunately. But
I think it's because the expectation that they will basically shoot you. The expectation in Greece is different. It's don't get arrested, because if you do get arrested, you probably won't get to see your lawyer for 48 hours. They might just release you after 48 hours, but those 48 hours you'll spend at the department, they're gonna torture you. They're just gonna do that. You're gonna end up in Gada, the General Police Directorate. They're gonna take you to like the fourth, fifth floor. I don't know where it is, and they're going to beat you senseless. We've had testimony from people that were tortured by the police, and they say that not only do they beat you really badly, they say like horrific stuff. I mean, they told a guy that after we beat you and make you eat your own shit, we'll come to your house and like kill your dog and rape your mother. They say stuff like this. Like they are fucked up, and they are like, oh, we got you now, motherfucker. We're going to fuck you up. That's and police accountability is basically like non-existent, especially now where we have like a right-wing government. So
Why is there so much protest militancy in Greece?
here's the thing. Greece has had not only a very politically active right, but also a very militant left. It is kind of the legacy of that's left to us after the Second World War, because we ended up in a brutal civil war between communist and left factions and fascist and right wing controlled government. That came. It's interesting how the civil war came about, but what you need to know is that the left essentially has its roots not only pre-war, but also with the resistance movements during World War II. And then after the civil war ended, the Greek left lost, and there was a lot of political repression. The Greek left was again pushed underground, and it re-emerged after the fall of the Greek military regime, the junta.
We found that people who are homeless, people who use drugs, and sex workers are subject to abusive stops and are arbitrarily detained.
Τίποτα, χωρίς να με έχουν βρει να κάνω κάτι παράνομο και να με πάνε για μια εξακρίβωση στοιχείων. Πάμε λοιπόν σε ένα τμήμα που μου λένε ότι θα κάνουμε μια απλή εξακρίβωση στοιχείων των 5-10 λεπτών, με αποτέλεσμα να κάθομαι εκεί 4 ώρες, ας πούμε.
The police is stopping individuals because of the way they look, which is discriminatory. Sometimes they subject people to physical and verbal abuse.
Και το ένα λοιπόν έφερε το άλλο. Έφαγα λοιπόν μία μπουνίτσα από το συγκεκριμένο αστυνομικό, με αποτέλεσμα να ματώσω ολόκληρη και να μου σπάσουν τα δύο δόντια. Με βρήκε να κάνω κάτι, με βρήκε να κάνω χρήση, με βρήκε να κάνω κάτι. Όχι. Με βρήκε απλά να προχωράω στην Πειραιώς και να περιμένω να πάρω ένα πακέτο τσιγάρα.
So speaking of fascism and hunting communists, Turkey seems to always be mad at Greece. So what's going on there?
Greece and Turkey were kind of historical enemies, especially since the beginning of the Greek state came through its own revolution against the Ottoman Empire that was backed by the British and French and Russians. But the thing is, the modern conflict mostly comes about from the Greco-Turkish War of 1922 that ended in a genocide, an exchange of populations between Greece and Turkey. Essentially, more than 1 million people on each side were appended and sent across to the other country on the basis of language or religion, often very arbitrarily. Greece was essentially not a thing for 400 years, from the fall of the Byzantine Empire until from 1453 until like what is it
1821
1821. There isn't like this Greece exactly. There is just nationalism that comes about during occupation, and a lot of these populations were like mixed up. Like there were Albanians, there were Bulgarians in the north, in Macedonia, like lots of ethnic groups that came together to consider themselves Greek, usually tied by religion and language. So Greek language, Christian religions, you would be considered Greek. It was less about your like DNA. If you see Greeks today, they kind of look like all types of people. Like you won't see like there's like we run the gamut. We look like everything. It's mostly like a mix of Balkan populations, Turks, and recent migrants to Greece. Something that I wanted to touch on is that a lot of the very modern conflict between Turkey and Greece has to do with the Cypriot crisis, where, and it was part of the reason why the junta fell. I mean, I think the main reason why the junta fell, where the junta in Greece like helped some coup plotters in Cyprus, far-right Greek coup plotters that were pro-unification to take power. Turks
What does
reacted
pro-unification mean in this text?
So essentially, it was part of the big idea was the enosis or enosis, the unification between Cyprus and Greece, unification of Greek lands, because Cypriots speak Greek. They're basically the only other country that speaks Greek out there, and they used to be a British colony basically until the 40s, 50s, actually closer to the 50s than the 40s. They were the unsinkable aircraft carrier in the Mediterranean.
I mean, we still use them to position our countermeasures against Assad, so
yeah, and
Russia that's with Assad.
It's really funny because the Russians have a bunch of dealings with Cyprus. Very invested in the housing sector there. Very they have. I mean, the Cypriot army has like 82 T-80Us, T-80 UK tanks, and they have BMP-3s. I didn't get those just like incidentally.
Since we're on the topic of Cyprus, I've heard when the invasion of Cyprus was, just so I'm sure I'm getting the dates right, it was 1974. That's when Turkey invaded Cyprus, right?
Yes.
The Greek junta falls the same year, or is it a couple years after?
Same year. It was the same government, but there had been a counter coup the previous year by the hardliners. And see, that's the thing. It wasn't just the Cypriot crisis. It was there was already a very big blow that had come against the junta in 1973, which was the university uprising, the Athens Polytechnic uprising. Here's the deal, right? The Greek left was kind of undercover during the years of the junta. There were several actions taken by it, but nothing major. However, it was on the 14th of November. Was 14 no or 14 or 15th of November 1973. Students at the Polytechnic University of Athens barricaded themselves in the buildings and the courtyard, and they took over the university, which is something that, like, school and university takeovers is something that happens a lot in Greece by left-wing organizations, and they happened again now, and they happened in 2008 as well. um, but essentially the students took over. They put outside, they put signs that said, like, fuck off NATO, fuck off USA. They put out like and they set up a radio station inside, and they started broadcasting to Athens. And essentially, like, they secured the compound of the university. And there was a it was a huge protest, right? And the Greek junta kind of panicked because of that. They didn't know what to do. The first day, there wasn't that big a reaction. They just kind of sent, like, a bunch of police around. They sent some. It was the second day that the crackdown really came about, because they were hoping to kind of, like, starve them out, cut the electricity, but the students got, like, I think, generators working. And the Greek public went out to support them. Like, they went around the university, and they started throwing in food. Interestingly, the most famous the first person that was killed in the Polytechnic was the best friend of my stepdad, which is really fucked up. He has an intimate connection to that event. Um, can you see here? So, uh, like, this was the situation outside of the Polytechnic. Um, these aren't very good quality, but I mean, you can see "Down with Authority," hanging a swastika here, if you can see it. NATO outside, United States leave, and essentially, like, the second day, the junta sent out policemen and posted snipers, and they started essentially firing into the crowds, uh, and hitting a few people, a few protesters. And eventually, what happened is the crowds dispersed, but the students stayed in. And on the 17th of November, 1973, the junta sent a tank. They pulled out an AMX-30 tank, and the students still stayed inside, and the radio stations like, they were telling the soldiers directly, listen, you're our brothers, don't do this, don't kill don't kill the students, don't kill the people in kind. But it was kind of futile, and what happened is the tank rammed the gate of the Polytechnic University, and the police, like, destroyed the protest, and a bunch of people were killed. And I think it was like 25 or 26 people were killed in the whole affair, with hundreds of injuries. um, but it is like a staple in modern Greek political history, because it's considered one of the things that brought down the junta, because the public reaction was extremely hostile. Nobody. It was. I don't the Fallout meme. Nobody liked that.
Mhm.
Nobody liked that. Nobody liked the crackdown at the Polytechnic, and that's the thing. It happened because the junta attempted the liberalization and allowing more freedom of the press, and the backlash was a counter coup from hardliners that took over the junta. So, and those guys were the ones that ended up, like, the next year, kind of falling from power. And the legacy of the Polytechnic is not only, like, a big part of the strength of the Greek left. Essentially, like, everyone knows it was the Greek left that was behind the Polytechnic, and there was a lot of right wing coping that said, "Well, we were at the Polytechnic," and everybody says, "Yeah, sure, here you are," and they point at the cops. It's like, like, hey, there you are. That's you guys. That's you. They're right. There you go. Um, and um, and yeah, so that's the thing. Students in Greece, thankfully, this has persisted throughout all governments because it's very unpalatable to be like to besmirch the Polytechnic University uprising. Um, Students in Greece, every year on the 17th of November, they have a day off, and they will usually put up some kind of like school play throughout the whole of Greece. This is standard, where they will commemorate the bravery of the students standing up against fascism. So, because this is something that is very, very good, and that I want preserved from Greek education, it is that this this event is considered like a broad anti-fascist holiday, and it is something that all students celebrate and all students learn about.
Okay, so this actually comes into my question. Is I've heard the take that because the Greek government was so hardline, so far right at the time, even though it seemed pretty clear that they had a right to defend themselves and that Turkey was doing something wrong, they didn't receive help because they were so hardline, and that this basically isn't the sole reason, but it's one of the main reasons that led to the fall of the military government in Greece because of, like, I guess you could say, like, the strategic failure in Cyprus.
Yeah, the strategic failure in Cyprus was huge for the dissolution of the junta. Um, it was seen as a national embarrassment. Greece couldn't really help Cyprus effectively fight. But and that's the thing. Like Turkey was in the right to kind of like engage in intervention, but it wasn't exactly in the right to occupy like half the island
Half the
essentially.
right.
Um, yeah, like nobody recognizes the Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus, and that's for good reason because even though there were clauses in the power like in the guarantor system that Cyprus had, nobody said that, oh, when somebody breaks the rules, you're supposed to occupy the country
Right, you're supposed to
and stop
occupy half the
and
nation.
divide it. Yeah, divided on ethnic lines. I mean, consider that there were Greek and Turkish populations like spread across the island, and they ended up on hard lines across the map, and a demilitarized zone that has been around since then and likely won't go away anytime soon. I mean, modern Turkey uses a lot of jingoistic and aggressive rhetoric against Greece, and that has to do with a lot with water rights and the.
That's really funny. Great. Turkey does the same shit in Syria and Iraq with water.
I'm Egyptian. They do the exact same shit. The amount of times I've heard the EEZ. If I see another EEZ pop up where Turkey and Egypt are involved, I'm gonna blow my brains out.
Yeah, so that's the thing with Turkey is that with Greece it's a little different as with Syria because they can intervene in Syria essentially whenever because the US
If they
has a
can
very hard
afford it.
time. Yeah, if they can afford it, they'll do it. But going to war with Greece is a more difficult like undertaking because if you want like a relative power level, Greece is a bit like Ukraine to Russia when it comes to Greece and Turkey. Sure, I mean Turkey is more powerful, but there aren't that many great avenues for Greece to be attacked. Our air forces are pretty like evenly matched. Our air defenses tend to be better, and Greece has a ridiculously big army considering its size. Specifically because Turkey is our neighbor and we're worried about them. But also, there's the problem that we're both in NATO and we are essentially, if you want to look at it, probably the second and third biggest armies in NATO. Uh, but at the same time, we we are aiming our weapons at each other. Um, which
two
is
two of the only
beyond fucked up.
two of the only other countries who like before Ukraine were actually pulling their weight in NATO.
Yeah,
Greece, and
and we're
Turkey.
basically the only reason why we're pulling our weight is because,
It's
well,
because
Turkey
you hate
is like a militarist
another NATO
nightmare.
ally.
That,
Yeah.
yeah, and because we're scared of Turkey. Like Greece has similar levels of military spending to Ukraine. We have like a very big stockpile of weapons. We've basically kept everything we've been given since the Cold War started. I mean, heck, we are still running around 400 M48 Patton tanks. Greece and Germany have a lot of defense cooperation. The majority of our tank fleet is Leopards. We have 500 Leopard 1s and 350 Leopard 2s, Leopard 2A4s and Leopard 2A6 tanks. And we're going to modernize those. Same stuff. They have Leopard 2s, Leopard 2A4s, Leopard 2. I don't know if they have many A6s, but they do have a few. I am sure. And they also have M60s and M48s. Um, so we use the same stuff.
Do you think you're pretty evenly matched in that?
That's the thing. Like, I don't even know why Greece has that many tanks. Like, where the fuck are we gonna use them? Like, have
Yeah,
you seen the
the
map of
Navy,
Greece?
I would think, would be the best thing for Greece to invest in.
The navy is far more important. The thing is, though, like, I don't know, fighting
Well,
between
well,
Greece and
the
Turkey.
other thing too is
Sure.
I don't want to call them engagements because they're not exactly engagements, but whenever like Greek or Turkish airspace, in the word airspace, whenever like something is violated, it's the airspace. So I feel like there's a very heavy focus on jets just
Oh
because of
yeah,
that factor.
we have like some
It's
200
not it's
plus jets on each side.
yeah
So
yeah it's
yeah.
not really like a frigate is crossing into someone's like what is it water territory.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
and
Turkey
the
claims
navy.
everything as their territory at the same time.
Yeah, they dispute a lot of the islands. Basically, nobody else agrees about the status of the Greek islands. Everybody recognizes the Greek territorial boundaries apart from Turkey, and they were outlined in the Treaty of Lausanne. There were some things that were gray areas, but for nothing like Turkey claims. And also they ignore the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, which Greece is a signatory. Well, because it benefits us. Yeah, but I mean, Turkey doesn't want to sign it because it would severely restrict their exclusive economic zone and territorial waters. Because there is this Greek island that kind of messes everything up for them. And if there was ever a conflict between us, I think they would just invade and take that island because we cannot defend it. It's the island of Castellorizo. So you see, like you have Greece here and Turkey here, and you have all these islands that are close. But these islands are pretty big. Greece has like National Guard and military deployed on these islands. There are at least some 30,000 like soldiers deployed along on the Greek islands on these island chains that are hugging the Turkish coast. And the challenge here has to do with like Turkish artillery essentially being in a much better position to strike, while Greek artillery, well, where the fuck are you gonna put it? On the islands? Like, it's a problem. You're gonna have to weather artillery storms from Turkey if you're gonna fight in these islands, and possibly like amphibious attacks. Because come on, like, it's a breath away. It's nothing. But all this is great and all. There is a lot of planning on how to defend these islands, but let's be real, we can't defend Castellorizo. You see
uh
this?
honest question, has the Greek government considered sending like I this is probably not viable, but has the Greek government considered sending ships to fire missiles back at the artillery, like between the
It's
islands
not
and
not
the
really
Turkish coast?
viable. The thing with artillery is you need consistency. You can't just like fire once
Right.
off and silence it. When you take a frigate close, you risk naval batteries hitting it, like the anti-ship missiles. So Greece will likely avoid like directly, putting its ships at risk unless the air defenses can cover them It's a very interesting situation because when you consider that these two countries have massive stockpiles of tanks, neither of them can really use their tanks in an engagement against each other. I mean, the only real big land border we have is this here, and if you see it, we are separated by the Maritsa River, which is the Evros in Greek. It is marshland here, and if Turkey is to attack, you run directly into mountains, right? So, and these positions, let me tell you, if you think that Donbass is fortified, this place is very similar in terms of how heavily fortified, mined, and pre-sighted all the approaches are to everywhere. And if Greece was stupid enough to attack, okay, let's say Greece attacks, where are we gonna go? Like, the Turkish army outnumbers us, and they have more heavy weapons, so there is no point in us fighting here. All we have to do is just kind of sit back and fortify our border. So essentially, all of our big tanks and weapons would essentially be in a big staring contest, just kind of looking at each other here and shelling each other, but not really advancing on either side because it is kind of pointless. What would Greece do? Like, try to occupy Istanbul? I mean, I know it's a meme, but like, Istanbul has a bigger population than Greece. So what the fuck are we gonna do? We are very, very small. Greece has only like 10 million people. We're not Turkey. We don't have 80 million people to throw around.
So
But yeah,
I say a lot that because you look at the Balkans especially, I say that while NATO was originally founded for a different purpose, its main purpose today is to stop war from breaking out between Euro states. Do you feel like NATO's the only thing keeping you two apart right now?
oh, Turkey and
Mm-hmm.
Greece, absolutely. Really, it's just the guarantees of NATO that keep Turkey from like arbitrarily snatching up islands and trying to fight with Greece. Essentially, we would be in like a perpetual state of like low end war if shit like that if NATO wasn't there. But because we're both in NATO, it's kind of a gray area when it comes to guarantees. I guess if Turkey attacked Greece, it could invoke Article 5 saying that it's an attack on a member of the alliance. But
Article 5 is optional to honor.
who who considers a member of the alliance as an attack with another member of the alliance? You know, it's kind of messy, and that's the thing. We have made our we have tried to prepare ourselves beyond NATO. So Greece has a pretty like an alliance with France essentially, and the way it goes is like the Greek government is so fucking cucked. We bought like Rafales, and we bought some frigates from the French, and we're also there's a chance that we're also gonna have Greek deployments in some military missions in Africa, and like Greek deployments outside of Greek soil are gonna be so fucked, so controversial, and I don't want the Greek military.
Oh my
orders.
god! So like they're
No, no,
gonna
no.
send dudes to like what are they? They're gonna send dudes to like Niger?
Gonna go
They
fight
might.
ISIS?
Yeah, there were
That's
some discussions of that happening,
insane, dude.
but if they do that, like protests are gonna be ridiculous.
Well, I'm telling you right now. Well, Canada was doing like missions out to like Africa, basically. Like Mali was one of the countries, and that was huge. Like there weren't any protests over it or anything, but like the national discussion behind it and the media, it was like it was very like I hate to use this word, but it was toxic, man. People didn't really like it. It was very controversial.
That's why America doesn't report on shit. Like they try not to let anyone know. Like it's you only hear it when we bomb Syria in the one-off, because we're not regularly bombing Syria. But if America is regularly bombing someone, you don't hear anything about it.
The last major deployment of Greek troops in a combat like scenario happened in the Korean War, when when Greece had just ended its civil war. We sent like 1,000 soldiers to fight in Korea, but the it's ridiculous. We also sent like a medical mission to Afghanistan, but we aren't really fighting outside of the Greek borders because I think it's also kind of good for our diplomacy. A lot of we have pretty decent relations with most of the Middle Eastern states, which is something very uncommon for Western countries. Greece is considered like a nominally Western country. I don't know how we're considered a Western country, honestly, but we are. And I think Greece has pretty decent relations with most countries in the region.
You guys do pretty good. Yeah, I'd say
Yeah.
you guys might be the only European country where there's no controversy at all with Middle Eastern North African countries.
Because we
Like the
aren't
Greek
there bombing anybody.
Yeah, no, yeah, exactly. And it's like there's no like nobody's trying to none of you guys are trying well, none of you guys are trying to do anything like sketchy in Libya. Like we just know like
Yeah.
you know
Yeah.
you guys
Nobody's
okay.
building weird
guys-
dams anywhere.
Yeah, you guys
I
are just
mean,
trying
we
to,
are
like,
backing
chill.
Haftar. We're backing Haftar against the.
I know you
against-
guys are, but like
yeah.
people don't mind that as much. Like still like for example Qatar who's backing who's backing like the GNA. They probably still don't really care about that because it's like ultimately I feel like you guys are
But see,
backing
that's the thing. Like,
Haftar because it's mostly in your interest. It's not really like you guys have any ambitions outside of that, outside of like your
yeah,
direct interest in your access to the EEZ.
yeah, exactly. There's
You want to
Greece
explain what
has
all
an
those things
incentive
are
there.
for people?
So Greece has an
Yeah.
incentive to with sure.
No, you go first. I'll follow up.
Okay, yeah. So Greece has like a bunch of disputes with exclusive economic zone rights, which are like water and natural resource exploitation rights in the Eastern Mediterranean. There, and the big bad for Greece is Turkey. So it tends to it's in it's in Greece's interest to kind of collaborate with states in the Middle East, which also have a bone to pick with Turkey. Which, hey, hello, is everybody. So Greece maintains pretty decent relations with Egypt because they kind of agree on exclusive economic zone rights, and with Israel, which also kind of agrees with Greece on exclusive economic zone rights. So because we have a decent relation with Israel, we have a decent relation with Egypt. The rest of the stuff just comes along naturally as us being allies with the United States, but not really deploying our military. So even like jihadist groups don't have like a very big reason to hate Greece. Like, have you ever seen ISIS burn a Greek flag? Like,
Yeah, I was going to
who
ask if you've
gives
had
a
any
shit?
ISIS attacks.
No, Greece hasn't
Yeah,
had
no,
a single, not one, not we haven't had one Islamic
that's
terror attack in Greece.
that's
Not
the
one.
thing too. You have ISIS propaganda videos in every single language talking about like oh the Muslims in so and so country should like target the military of that country. None for Greece though. None for Greece. And there's like how many Syrians are in Greece right now? Like
A lot of people have passed through Greece. There's
oh
probably like
okay,
2
so
or
they're
3
not just
million that passed
lingering
through.
there anymore.
Does Greece not like migrants?
So Greece went back and forth. Thankfully, during the height of the migrant crisis, we had a more friendly government towards like immigration and refugees. So we did a pretty decent job in passing people through Greece and sending them off to other places like Germany. And around 50,000 stuck around. The refugee crisis now it's really bad because we have a very right wing government, and there's fighting at the border, like sending migrants and refugees back and forth between Greece and Turkey, pushbacks into the Mediterranean Sea, pushing people into the water. Essentially, we took like a pregnant woman, put her on a rubber dinghy, and sent her out to the sea without fucking paddles. The Greek Coast Guard is essentially like a terrorist organization right now. And we're doing really bad shit on that front. And we also have terrible conditions in the concentration camps, essentially, we have set up in our islands instead of taking the people in the mainland. So things are pretty bad now, but we're not in the height of the crisis. And the thing is, you know how a lot of people say that, oh, you open your borders, you let in Islamic militants, and they're gonna like blow up your country. You're gonna have terror attacks. That's the thing, right? Terror attacks are political acts. They tend to come against targets, those terrorist groups
Well,
and
the
militant
other
organizations
thing
that are-
too is the migrants are like a very convenient scapegoat because
Yeah,
if you look at the people who actually commit these attacks in countries like Belgium, France, Germany,
They'll
they
be like
grew up there.
citizens of that country.
They
Yeah.
grew
yeah,
up there.
yeah.
Like I can only think, like I remember I did this one. I looked through like all the guys who committed like terror attacks at the height of the migrant crisis in France, and only one was not like a French citizen, and he had lived there for 10 years.
Like 1 or 2 million people passed through Greece, and we didn't have a single terror attack. That has to do with us, like our political position in in Middle Eastern affairs, us basically not bombing people, not being involved. There's some ramblings, but nothing really concrete. The thing is, Greece has an experience with terrorism. It's just that it's usually nihilistic anarchist terrorism. That kind of like is bigger in Greek spaces. That it used to be like car bombings, murders, not that many murders, very few, but it tended to be like a very big thing, and it's still part of like the legacy of the modern Greek left, which is a very interesting political landscape. Um, and very divided between the communists, the anarchists, anti-fascists, and nihilistic anarchists. So it's kind of its very own thing. Different neighborhoods being different things. It's very interesting because the left like kind of like hates each other. Like all parts of the left kind of hate each other. But in Greece, they have some common enemies, so they end up kind of working together on certain projects, which are mainly having to do with anti-fascism and anti-police. So um, it also has to do with each part playing to their strengths, right? So the Communist Party, for example, is very well organized, very like regimented, and they tend to be able to organize strikes very effectively. If the Communist Party wants, there's going to be a strike, like a nationwide strike the next day. They are that well organized, and they've done that multiple times, and they will keep doing it. They are very strong in unions, and they have the manpower. So essentially, if there's ever like a huge protest, the communists are going to be there, and they're going to be there with like the most people, with carrying flags that are basically like batons but disguised as flags. And they do a lot of they tend to avoid fighting the police directly, but the militant fronts and the worker organizations are more likely to fight the cops, and the youth communists are more likely to fight the cops. But the anarchists tend to fight in their own turf, like around the center of Athens in Exarchia, and they have they protected migrants during the height of the Golden Dawn in Greece in like 2011, 2012, 2013. Like the anarchists were very involved in protecting like refugees. It was Exarchia was mainly the main safe place for refugees in Athens, where it was very unlikely you'd be attacked by Nazis, neo Nazis, like Golden Dawn members. Uh, but yeah, like the anarchists are much more likely to fight the police on a regular basis with Molotov cocktails, like Black Bloc, stuff like that. Um, and yeah, if we're talking like topical things, the murder of Grigoropoulos in 2008, that was 6th of December 2008. There was rioting in Athens and around Greece for 3 weeks when that happened. It was that big, 3 whole weeks of like major rioting, multiple buildings burned, cars burned, police cars burned, police stations attacked with fire bombs. Greek anarchists took over news stations and radio stations around Athens and like broadcasted their own shit. Like there was a huge amount of fighting. Athens turned into a war zone, and I think that's like I know it sounds weird, but I think it's good for the police to know that if they kill somebody, it's gonna be rioting. Like, for sure. There is no like two words about it. There's not gonna be like a bunch of, oh, maybe he deserves it. Yeah, sure, the right is gonna do that because they're spineless. But that's the thing. It's not as normalized to do, like, for a big part of society to like do police hero worship in Greece. Nobody likes the cops. Even like there's very few in the right that do. But yeah, like broader society, no, fuck no. They don't have like some big affinity for the cops, and there isn't this culture of apologia. We don't have cop movies. Yeah, fucking yeah, like I see people talking about the cops. They talk about them like they're superheroes. In Greece, like we kind of know that like they're basically shitty, corrupt, and violent. So nobody's like that interested in like you know cop hero worship. There are, of course, there are people on the right that do that, but fuck, I mean that's the right everywhere. In Greece, the left is a much stronger force relatively to what it is in the U.S. because consider percentages, right? We have like a 5-6% of like uh, the population that consistently votes for the communists, right? The Marxist Leninists. We have and the coalition of the radical left, which was a self-proclaimed like radical socialist party. Um, Essentially democratic socialists. They were the previous government, and they commanded around 35% of the vote. So if you want to see the split of how Greece is like, it's around 30 or 40% like leftist, and maybe like 40% conservative, and then the rest is split between the far right and like some very few centrists where they exist. And libertarians, like the American libertarians, those don't exist here.
They shouldn't
They're a
exist
joke.
anyway.
They don't know, but nobody's a
Libertarian is
libertarian
a
in Greece.
joke ideology. It's I refuse to believe
Yeah.
it's real.
It's very, if you look at a lot of it, it's a very Russian influenced as well. Like the
Yeah.
contrarian parties in America are very Russian influenced. How's internationalism there? Is there fascist internationalism? Like every now and then, um, I don't remember what country it was, but I think it might have been Poland when the abortion protest happened. Like Italian fascists showed up to like counter protest and all that stuff. Do you have any international fascist movements or any international leftist movements coming out of Greece?
So,
Gold
well,
fought in the
Golden
Balkans.
Dawn, yeah. Golden Dawn tried to collaborate with pretty much every far right movement out there when they were around, when they were a force to be reckoned with. But thankfully, they are weaker now than they were, and there aren't that many Golden Dawn people ostensibly, but there are plenty of neo Nazis going around Greece.
Yeah, they are.
And
They're directly connected to. They're directly connected to the Russian fascist.
Yeah, I mean the guy who owns Stormfront, the in America had come to and spoken to Golden Dawn in Greece. They had collaborated there a little bit, and yeah, like the far right still tries to like enter the government like through far right parties. There are like a couple of parties that might end up in parliament, and we have a unicameral system here. So we have like one parliament. We don't have a senate. So parliament, if you have power in parliament, you have power over the country essentially. And yeah, the thing is like. New Democracy, the main like conservative party, kind of absorbed a lot of the far right vote after Golden Dawn was destroyed, and that's a big part of why they have like a very very strong uh, like a very harsh position on refugees and immigrants, um, and it's pretty rough. It's really really funny. Our prime minister like tries to play like modern European conservative leader, kind of like I don't know. Imagine like plays modern, but he's from the kleptocratic faction of the party, because the Greek conservative party is especially like it's kind of split between like a small percentage of like center rightists, a big block of conservatives and kleptocrats, and a bunch of far rightists who are probably like 20 or 30% of the party right now. So the conservatives are still like a force to be reckoned with, but I think they're gonna end up losing the next election because there's scandal after scandal right now. There's the fucking we have Greek Watergate is going down right now, with conservatives using the security services of Greece to spy on, well, everybody, but mainly like political oppositions and members of their own government. So it's kind of like insane what goes on here.
I'm just doing a quick search, but it's not going well. I'm trying to pull up the democracy index for you.
Oh, Greece is considered one of the free countries, and it's considered. I think it has a higher position than the U.S. Um,
Yeah, the U.S. is not good, especially after Trump. There was a lot of points taken off.
I mean, we should have points removed because our like freedom of the press is going down the toilet. Like, especially because of like corruption with channels like being very connected to the government, and like it's just horrible shit.
So
I think,
functioning government is where you're losing points.
yeah, that's fair. I mean, fuck. I think that the thing with Greece is like political violence is probably the biggest. Political violence and corruption are the biggest things that Greece will lose points on. Um, but yeah, I mean, that's the thing. At least I have a pleasure in knowing that the far right won't just like gallivant around unopposed. Like if they wanna protest, if they wanna agitate, they're gonna be met with like leftists on the street. Like no, like they nobody should fucking like Nazis. So yeah, and and that's the main thing that the Greek left is united in. Yeah, sure, like we have to deal with the communists being like not wanting to engage in any left wing government. We have to deal with them like opposing, NATO and American imperialism, because they're essentially like an old school pro Soviet party that's still around, and they oppose like shipments to Ukraine. You have to deal with like fucking like anarchists and social democrats and socialists, but they all agree that when it's time to like fight the Nazis, everyone's gonna like play their role. Like the communists are gonna fight the Nazis using their like manpower and unions, and the anarchists are gonna fight them with petrol bombs. That's just how it goes. There's leftist unity in fighting the Nazis, which I'm all for. No, not gonna.
I've missed if you answered if there's any internationalism with the leftist parties.
I think the anarchists do most of that, and probably the communists engage with the like probably like old school international organizations. I think a lot of international labor unions tend to recognize the major left wing labor union, which is the All Worker Militant Front, and these guys are controlled by the Communist Party, but they have membership that is far wider than the Communist Party. So these guys are probably the most internationalist component of the communists, and because they're communists, you know how they fucking are. Like they are in all the conferences, all the fucking like, oh yes, the future of Marxism, Leninism, all that bullshit. Um, but they're not like American tankies. They're a bit different. They are very much their own thing. So, like for example, the Greek Communist Party doesn't like China at all. They're still very much steeped in the Sino-Soviet split, if you can, if you can believe that. They say that China is a capitalist, um, superpower that engages in neo-imperialism in Africa, which is, you know, just correct. They hate NATO like vehemently, but at the same time they won't directly defend Russia or Russian. Like they said that the invasion of Ukraine was like in inter-imperialist fighting. Essentially, that they
They don't
called
sound that bad
Russia
to me.
imperialist. That's the thing,
I'm
though.
used
They
to I'm
are.
used to American communists, though. You know, you have
They
to
are not.
understand my perspective.
Yeah, they're not like American tankies, but at the same time, for example, like they're pretty like transphobic and homophobic.
Mm,
Uh, s- uh,
interesting.
so that's the thing.
They
Like the
sound very
communist,
nationalist.
they are.
Is
The
it? Is it?
Communist Party of Greece is like um, there would be a progressive party in the 30s and 40s, but their progressivism is wearing thin because they don't move with the times, if you know what I mean. They haven't adjusted. The only thing that they're left at, where they are very progressive, is like rights and protections for migrants and refugees. The Communist Party is very good on those points, and they're also very decent with like women's rights, up to the point of trans women, where they are like shit. For all other women's rights, sure, but they are very, very shaky. They have a they basically say that they're against gay marriage because they're against all marriage, which is a really funny cope. But fuck, like they are weirdos. But I at the same time, it's not like they're gonna get in and like put like gay people in like labor camps or something. They're not like that bad. They are just like boilerplate, like just kind of bigoted. Um, yeah, they are an interesting interesting kind of their own thing, you know.
Do they do it kind of because like we'll see a lot of like see this a lot with like Middle Eastern countries where they see like gay stuff as being part of liberal democracy in the West, and is
Yeah.
that why they reject it?
With the
I
Greek
mean, that's
communists, they say,
just their
yeah,
excuse, you know. That's not why they reject it, but you know what I mean.
they say that it's basically like it's a capitalist mode of structuring society,
Yeah,
whatever.
being gay has a profit motive, I guess. Okay.
Just bullshit like that. But they're not like, oh, you can't be gay, or it's like should be illegal to be gay. They don't do stuff. They'll say that, yeah, no, like protections for like gay couples, they can do whatever, but we're against all marriage categorically. Like marriage should be abolished, kind of. And they also say that shouldn't gay marriage shouldn't be around. And they I think they're still. No, but that's the thing. Like it's not progressive because they are against gay adoption. So that they don't really have an excuse for.
What's their stance on adoption in general then?
Uh, Adoption between like straight couples is fine. All for it. Adoption for gay couples, no, because they're gay. Like basically that.
I feel like a conversation with one of these guys would be insane.
Oh fuck yeah! I mean, that's the thing. Like the main thing you're going to hear about is like NATO and Americans, the killers of peoples. That's how they frame you guys.
Oh, I can have that type of conversation all day. And then you went into detail about how different the left wing is from the American tankies. So I think there's a huge problem with overgeneralizing of fascism in general. Fascists are very, very different, and they don't all get along very well. They tend to not get along that well at all in many cases. So I was curious about what does fascism exactly look like in Greece?
There are a few schools, if you want to see it. There's the like ethno nationalists, like guys who are concerned with like waving Greek flags and telling you about how Greece is the like best place in the world. Police stands, guys who like
Patriots. That's what we call them
yeah,
here.
the Patriots. But we call them like nationalists here,
Mhm.
and a lot of these guys are willing to work with neo Nazis, because so it's usually like nationalists and like and neo Nazis. That's the two big ones, And nationalists and fascists are basically like interchangeable. They just kind of all together.
The Orthodox brother types with like the Serbian, Russian, and like Greek flag and like their Instagram profile
Yeah,
picture
yeah.
fall under this category.
These guys are nationalists. Yeah, these guys tend to be nationalists. These guys won't necessarily like they won't necessarily like neo-Nazis. Sometimes, but a lot of the time they kind of like they will avert their gaze or like talk about Greece in World War II and how we fought the Nazis. So because that's the thing, like it's actually kind of a tough sell to be a Nazi in Greece, considering that like Greece suffered horrifically. Like we had a huge famine here, brutal occupation by the Nazis. So the real world Nazis, and a lot of people have like grandparents who are still alive who remember the Nazis. My grandmother, however long she was alive, she told me stories from the occupation of Greece. From coming face to face with actual real real Wehrmacht soldiers. And because it's a tough sell, you have a few litmus tests that you can test on people to see, to kind of separate them and put them in bands.
It's
So
like how recently with the anti-Semitism and Kanye, everyone's being like, "Whoa! Suddenly there's
yeah,
a line here."
well, yes, but we have several litmus tests in Greece that you can try on people. First of all, is whether or not they do apologia for the junta, for the dictatorship. If they do like apologia for the junta, you can pretty much guess that these guys are fascists. If they're older people, they're like old timey junta loving like boomers. These types are slightly different with political engagement. They tend to mostly care about nationalist stuff. Um, but if they start like if they do denial of the Holocaust, if they do denial of the deaths of the Polytechnic University of Athens, those guys tend to be neo-Nazis. And if they're cops, they also tend to be neo-Nazis. like the here's a fun statistic for you. Um, so in the 2012, Golden Dawn came away with around 7% of the vote, and they got around 6 or 7% around a lot of areas in Athens. However, some people noticed that areas around the main police directorate of Athens and certain places that had big police departments tended to skew more heavily towards Golden Dawn. So, for example, I think Kesariani, or like I'm not sure if it was Kesariani, but like a specific area in Athens that around the police directorate pulled 23% for Golden Dawn, and people basically speculated that if this is right and the rest of the population, which is not much different than the other parts of Athens, voted for Golden Dawn at the same rate, the policemen who were voting in that precinct must have pulled at least like 45 to 55% Golden Dawn for that result to have come about. So take that as you will. Golden Dawn made a huge effort to like become friendly with the Greek police, and they succeeded. And there haven't really been purges of like Greek police, so that's why like getting arrested by the Greek cops is could be like you could end up traumatized. They could end up like fucking. You might if they find out you're an anarchist, fuck, like they're gonna torture you. Like no recourse uh the U.S. No, oh I want my lawyer, nothing like that. Like you're fucked.